34 charges on Trump this week, found guilty, all 34. Now, I think so. Obviously, I've been following this pretty closely. I wouldn't say I'm up to date on it, but the first question I would ask, and I believe I know the answer to this, is like, what is this for? And basically the idea is the hush money to Stormy Daniels that was under company accounts and seen as business payments rather than personal payments, right? That's from what I saw. Yeah. So basically it was just, instead of paying her directly as Donald Trump to Stormy Daniels, it was Trump's company to Stormy Daniels, which is like
the Justice Department looked at and said there's no crime there.
Yeah. So and it was only $130,000 in hush money, which is $138,000 in hush money. Now, I feel like we've seen much larger amounts of hush money and no convictions.
It's not a crime.
Yeah.
It's not a crime.
That's the whole point of it's like an NDA.
2 days later, even Jonathan Turley, who's followed this court, was in the courtroom and whatnot, and tends to be nonpartisan. Even he's saying, we still don't know the crime. He was found guilty of what?
Yeah.
There is no crime that they've told us that he's been guilty. And when Alvin Bragg was asked, he still didn't have an answer as to what he's guilty of.
I can't even find where the actual, like, what they're actually trying him for. They're calling it hush money, but
nobody can. Even lawyers can't figure it out.
Yeah.
That's why the most important takeaway from this case, and it's going to totally unravel. It never should have been brought in the first place, is that this is an attempt. They've been trying to convict Donald Trump of something, anything. That's why we've got these cases going on all over, and they're falling apart. And this one has been so blatantly rammed through that even liberal people are saying, there's no case here. This is, and why it's really bad for all citizens. Nobody should be proud of this or happy about this, even if you hate Donald Trump, because they have totally butchered the legal system.
Yeah, they just threw everything away. They literally looked everyone in the eyes and said, we're just not going to follow the judicial system, and we know that you guys are going to agree with it because you hate Trump.
From beginning to end, it's been a mess.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't allow anybody in the courtroom except certain individuals. Okay, fine. Those reporting back said it was, the judge was a problem. The charges were a problem. The judge changed the ruling or the jury instructions at the end. It's supposed to be unanimous. He basically said you don't have to have unanimous.
Which is insane. That's absolutely insane.
Right. Totally against that defendant's civil rights.
Yeah. So
the question now that most of us are having who've done this is, how long before the Supreme Court gets involved?
They have to, right?
And
that's what Mike Johnson said. Even he's like, hey,
very unusual. They did not want to get involved with the Al Gore, Bush, hanging Chad's Florida situation.
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court does not like to get involved in anything having to do with elections because it's supposed to be handled by the legislatures of each state. They make the rules, the regs, and then, you have election commissions and whatnot. In this case, they've crossed a Rubicon here where you have taken out a potential presidential candidate that the prosecutor said, I'm going to do everything I can to take this person and create a crime, basically. And then did it in front of the whole world, created a crime, and then had a judge who, by the way, that's another issue with the judge. Judges are supposed to be randomly selected, and yet somehow Merchan keeps showing up on every Trump thing that's out there. Okay? Or any ruling that has to do with anything with election.
He's in a liberal city with liberal judges with a liberal jury. They all said that they were. Right. Did you see 94% of them apparently voted for Biden in the last election? Right. I don't know how accurate that is. That's just one of the statistics I saw. I was like, everything's stacked against them.
New York is a very biased state, especially the city. Not the whole state, but there was no way he was going to get a jury of his peers in that state on something that's a political case, and it's totally political. Because then they tried to say that it was a federal election commission. Even they said there's no civil crime here either. So the state of New York had to create some abomination charge that said, we're going to take these federal crimes and prosecute you on the state level.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
You can't do that.
Everything, yeah.
Right.
So, it just kind of goes back to what we were saying when we initially had this conversation, before all this came up. If you were to strip politics away from this, it doesn't make any sense as to why he's being charged as just a person. Like hush money is one thing, but Pierce Morgan brought up a great point. What about Clinton? Remember Clinton within
There's
the
nothing illegal about paying money to
yeah.
somebody to squash a story. It's not illegal.
How much did
The person
yeah?
said the NBA.
How much was Clinton's hush money when he paid that secretary? Remember that? That was a big scandal, and then he just got off the hook with that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
and settled other cases where he was charged
yeah,
with
and he just got
sexual
off.
assault. Hey, well, I mean, he paid it, and it was non-disclosure or whatever
Yeah,
the agreement was, and they move on. Hey, I got news for people listening. We taxpayers have funded it for lower level people who had to pay hush money,
right.
and they used tax dollars to do it, which is completely obscene. But that has gone on in our lifetime too. So, it was meant to embarrass the president. Oh, the hush money, but everybody knew about it already. But
Yeah,
to take it
we
to
already
the
talked about it.
extreme, right? Well, you butcher our criminal our court system, and that's why I mean I am hoping for the sake of the country because this is just that egregious. The Supreme Court steps in and says, no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no.
they have
You
to.
don't even bother going to an appeal. This is an outrage because I mean it will be appealed and it's going to crumble on appeal. But the irony is it's got to be appealed through New York. And the ones up in New York State, guess what? They're probably going to uphold it
Oh
because
yeah,
that's just how bad New York is. Then it's going to go up to the Supreme Court, right? They have to decide if they're going to take it. None of that's going to happen by November.
yeah.
So, that this was their goal. They're going to try and put him in jail, which is also ridiculous for
For
somebody
hush
who.
money, hush money of
Well,
a very. Go ahead.
not only that, he's the age of the defendant, the fact that
10
he has no
years.
criminal record, right?
Statute of
And
limitations.
these are relatively misdemeanors. So basically, nobody does jail time, even though they say, oh, 4 years.
Yeah.
No, it should be maybe community service or some stupid ass thing like that. But this judge, you watch, he'll give him jail time because they have to take him out of the election cycle. They have
Which
to.
is funny
They
because
can't-
did you see Truth Social like exploded in the
Yeah.
sense of the donations that the president got? It literally crashed the website. He was getting so many
Yeah.
donations. Polling
Well, that's
numbers
it.
have only gone up
Yes. And
like
they've
crazy.
crossed, like I said, they've crossed the Rubicon here because when you now have people who can't stand Trump,
Yeah.
some of them are now even saying we're giving money to him now.
Well, I think
Heavy words.
because they're smart. Again, of course, there's smart people out there, but you have to realize that they basically just took your rights as a person with a fair trial and just basically ripped it up in front of you, because that's basically what this was. Because now they're starting to realize, oh, if this can happen to a president, what do you think is going to happen to just a regular citizen with a traffic ticket? Right? Now they have a reason to. Now they could just bypass things, basically.
Well, keep in mind too that Jean Carroll case, the woman that accused him of raping her,
Yeah.
20 years ago in some dressing room, and they found that it wasn't. New York State legislature actually passed a ruling that you can open the statute just for that year, so she could bring.
I saw
charge.
that they're doing that in a couple states now. So
Okay.
they're changing statute of limitations.
Right, right. And as an aside, for citizens in New York City who could care less about any of this and probably may
Yeah.
not even vote, you can't even walk the streets without something happening to you by
New
some
York City,
random person.
yeah, we talk about
And
it all
this
the
is what
time.
your district attorney is doing. He is bending over back, and he's not alone. You got the other one, Letitia James. They are bending over backwards to prosecute a political candidate because they hate him, basically. And they feel threatened by him.
Right.
Going out of their way to do this. And meanwhile, their city's turning to shit. I mean, it's a shit.
No one wants to
Those
go to
wanna
New
go
York
there
City.
tonight. I'm like, I don't want you to go to New York City. It's a hellhole. I
Yeah.
don't want you going there. So, they changed their minds. But point is, this is what they're spending their time on. And they've now twisted and I personally feel, as a citizen, I say this, regardless of who the people are. If the Supreme Court doesn't step in for something like this, and I saw a great article about this, what are they good for? And I'm really getting to that point.
Yeah.
After the situation with our elections, for those of us who believe that something went on that wasn't right in 2020. And I'll say this for people, this is the new theme. 81 million votes supposedly Joe Biden got. Somebody tell me, where are those 81 million people
Yeah.
now?
Exactly. We talked about that on the last podcast when maybe two ago, where we talked about how like it's wild how this guy who's a convicted felon can
Right.
fill arenas, and Joe Biden, like, you'll see his rallies, it's like four old people in a in like metal
And why
chairs.
do they have to go through all this? They didn't do it with Bill Clinton. They didn't do it with other presidents, with mistresses and whatnot. Why are they bending over back for this for a president that had 81 million votes? Why do they even care about Donald Trump? You know why? Because they know there weren't 81
They weren't
million
right,
votes.
right.
Okay? Because if he's been doing such a great job, and let's assume he had those 81 million, he wouldn't even he could go back in the basement. Why would he even have to campaign? Because they know he never had those
Back in the
81 million
basement, I
votes.
forgot about that. Yeah,
Okay? So here we are with, I mean, from a citizen who could care less about Donald Trump. And that's why you see the surge in people giving money now and saying this has to stop.
yeah,
Because you're right, Chris. Today it's Trump. And maybe once Trump's gone, they'll all be like, all right, now we can go back to the new normal uniparty that we used to have, and everyone can shut up and just live their lives and accept with what we have. But what happens when the next one comes along? The
exactly.
next person who says, you know what, we've had enough of this. And maybe that person will be from your generation. And they turn around and say, you know what, let's hit him with some charges. Let's bring something up, and we'll use this as a precedent.